Hey everyone, I just wanted to do a quick video on basic bed leveling for you. After a period of time, sometimes your bed can be completely tilted one way or the other, and your BL touch or your CR touch or whatever ends up just compensating over and over again for it until your bed is completely off by several millimeters. So this is kind of a restart video for you. After a period of time, sometimes you'll get to a point where you're just chasing your tail on the bed leveling. And with this machine, it's an Ender 3 V2. We've got the upgraded springs, which I highly recommend. That'll help keep better tension on the bed. We've also got the BL Touch bed leveler on here. It's the 1.3 version. So you can use several different tools. You can either use the calipers here, or you can also print off a specific height spacer off of Thingiverse. I'll have a link to these in the description, as well as the calipers. Also, before we start, I want to point out that I have the dual Z-axis kit installed. I have another video on installation of that as well. So you are probably familiar with gantry sag. The Ender 3s come with one Z-axis screw and one stepper motor. So they are prone to the sagging on this side. But for now, let's start at the bottom and work our way up with leveling the bed. Now, the first thing we're going to do is take our caliper or our other specified measuring device, which could be a spacer, and we're just going to measure. Make sure you've got the caliper flat right here on the bed. Just push it down tight. I've got some spacers here that I printed out to fill the slots, but we're basically going to measure the distance between the frame and the bottom of the bed. Just make sure you've got it nice and flat there. 44.20. Now also you'll notice that I've got the bed slid back. So you're going to measure each corner as close to the rails as possible. And then when we measure the back end, I'm going to do an average. I'm going to measure back here on each side, and then I'm going to slide the bed forward and measure here again to try to get as close as I can using the bed screw adjust. So on this side, you can see that we're at 44.76. Now, since this side was at 44.76 and this one was around 44.3, we're going to lower the bed by tightening the spring on this side. So we're going to turn it clockwise, and it'll bring that space down a little bit, and we'll remeasure. And I prefer tightening rather than loosening because the springs will hold, the adjustment will actually hold better if the spring is tighter. So I've averaged out both sides to where they're both at about 44.5 millimeters. And then next we're going to slide the bed forward, and we're going to do the same thing with the caliper approximately at about the same spot, and just make sure that it's flush at the bottom there. And if you push down hard enough, you're going to flex that, so you'll gain a little bit of space, but we don't want to push down too hard. We just want to make sure that that caliper is flush without pushing down super hard. So we take measurements on both sides again on that, and then we adjust the screw on the bottom just like we did on the front. Now, you can also go onto the back, and nothing is perfectly flat, especially with an entry-level machine. But we're just trying to get a baseline to start fresh again. Another thing you want to do if your machine's been together for a little while is check the screws, all the screws where the mounting points are, and make sure they're all tight still, because they do loosen up over time. And I guarantee if these screws at the bottom are loose, you're going to be chasing your tail all day long. You'll never figure out what the problem is. So make sure and double check that all the screws are tight on the machine. Okay, so we've got all the screws tightened to where we've got uniform height on the bed from the base rails over here. So we've got that done. Now we're going to work our way up, and the next thing is going to be the gantry, the x-axis. And as I said before, you'll get some sag on your x-axis, especially if you don't have the dual Z upgrade kit, which I've installed on this machine. And like I said, there's another video on that. If you subscribe, you'll see all my videos. So anyway, what can happen though is even if you have that dual Z-axis kit installed, is if you bump this while it's turned off, or let's say that your steppers are disabled after a print and you accidentally move this, well then you're still going to be off and you're still going to have actually a permanent sag, which you're going to have to recalibrate, and I'll show you how to do that real quick. So those of you that have subscribed to my channel know that we're working on laser engraving next, and this is another entry-level machine. It's the Ortur Laser Master Pro 2. So please subscribe if you're wanting to get into one of these other things. But for this machine, I had to print some spacers in order to get this thing up to use the roller. So if you did tumblers or something like that. So anyway, I've got these things set up real handy already, and these are 100 millimeter height, and this makes it a lot easier because before I was using the calipers to measure the height on each side, and now I don't have to. I can just use these spacers and set the bed about mid-level. Turn these sideways so that these tops hit the gantry there evenly. And then what you'll do is you'll have to turn each one of the screws on the stepper motor down so that they touch and rest on top of these spacers. And this is going to give you a much easier way of leveling your gantry, your your x-axis. Make sure it's not in the slot where the belt goes. And we just manually rotate each one down until it's resting. Now, if you push too hard, you're going to get the bed to sag because of the spring. So you want to just lightly touch the axis on the spacers. Okay, so that's where we've got it. Now they're aligned. You don't want to touch anything else on here until you power on the machine and the steppers have been activated. And you want to hit auto home immediately. That way it locks in that setting. And you'll have to do this if you accidentally bump or turn one of these stepper motors by hand on accident. Just as a double check, like you would if you were leveling it using a piece of paper, which is the old school method, make sure that the friction here between these spacers is about equal, and that'll tell you, you know, if you've got it squished down on the bed or not. And these feel pretty good. They move freely. There's just a little bit of friction, so I know that the gantry is level. Now I'm going to turn the machine back on. And you got to be real careful with this because you don't want to overstress the steppers because you're sitting right there at that level. So what we're going to do, and I don't know which firmware you have, but you can go to prepare and then move, and we're going to dial the Z. We're going to be careful about this, but we're going to dial the Z up above where it's at right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put in like 30. And the Z steppers will go up because right now it doesn't know whether it's at 0 or not. So we're going to go up. It's moving up and they're equal now. So the steppers are locked. You're not going to get any sag. We're going to remove these spacers. Now, this thing thinks that it's at 30, but it's actually not. So the next thing we're going to do is go back to auto home. And now this thing's going to auto home itself and find out where 0 is again. I'll fast forward here. And while I'm talking, you guys may have noticed that my bed looks really dirty. It's because I'm using the glue. I've had some adhesion issues, which partially were due to the varying bed level on the first layers, excuse me. But I found that this glue works really well, so I'm gonna go ahead and stick with it. And frankly, even though it looks dirty, it doesn't affect the bottom of my prints hardly at all. You can't even see hardly anything on there. But so anyway, we've done the auto home now. Now the machine knows where 0 is, and we'll probably have to do another Z offset, which will go to the Z offset tool. It's going to rehome. Okay, so now the machine thinks it's at the, well, it is at the previous Z offset, which was minus 3.05. It's too tight, so we're going to have to raise it. And since this is a negative number, we're going to have to go up a little bit. I'm going to do 2.8, minus 2.8, and see where we're at. And that's too loose. I didn't really change it much. So we're going to go back down to minus 2.9, and still no drag. So we're still pretty close to where we were before. Minus 2.95, try that. Still not good. Minus 3.0. Now we're starting to get some drag. And no, I'm not advertising for Hatchbox, but I do like their filament. I'm just using the paper that came with it. So got a little bit of drag. It feels a little bit Z. Kind of making a Z feeling. Okay, so I like that. That's where I'm going to leave it. Go to back. And then you're going to go to Control and Store Settings. Now it's stored that. One thing I would like to note is you can heat up the bed and the nozzle. I do recommend that before doing this procedure. So we could go back and say set PLA, preheat PLA. That'll heat everything back up. So you might want to do that to double check, because the bed will change its height slightly, and that could actually make a difference in your setup here. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this helps you out, and you can start from scratch. I'm going to go from the old Smith 3D firmware to the gyres next, and please subscribe, like if you want, and put any comments in there if you have any suggestions. Thanks for watching.